The sun blazed over Manhattan, its golden rays cutting through towering skyscrapers and reflecting off the bustling streets below. Cars sped down Fifth Avenue, honking impatiently as the rhythm of the city pulsed forward. Over in Times Square, enormous LED screens flashed with the latest breaking news. Supreme Court delivers historic ruling. Race-based admissions struck down as day. Collapsing major corporations consider diversity hiring policy. Sunny Hostin: this is the greatest setback for America in decades. In a small cafe off Broadway, two middle-aged men sat arguing over their morning coffee. America is turning its back on justice. What the hell is happening? Justice? I call it a scam. Do you have any idea how many qualified students were rejected from Harvard just because of their skin color? Meanwhile, in quiet suburban neighborhoods, concerned parents dropped their kids off at school, their minds troubled with thoughts of what the future held for a generation growing up in a country where merit was being sacrificed to the altar of political ideology. On every major news network, pundits were fiercely debating day. Some hailed it as a tool for justice, while others condemned it as reverse discrimination. But all the chatter, all the speculation would soon be overshadowed. A storm was coming, and it was about to explode. Live on air, the ABC News studio glowed under the brilliance of neon lights. Dozens of cameras were stationed, ready to capture every flicker of emotion, every raised eyebrow, every sharp glance exchanged between the panelists. At the center of the stage sat the iconic round table, the view polished and gleaming. The chairs were arranged neatly, each one soon to be occupied by a host whose words would be dissected, debated, and replayed by millions. The audience was in place. The countdown began. One by one, the co-hosts entered the stage. Joy Behar, the queen of sarcastic, with Dawn a knowing smirk, but beneath it lurked the awareness that today would be different. Sarah Haynes, once a firm supporter, Day now walked in with a newfound intensity, armed with facts and a readiness to challenge the prevailing narrative. Alyssa Farah Griffin, the lone conservative voice, settled into her seat, her confidence unwavering. She had prepared well for this debate. And finally, Sunny Host entered. Her Alexander McQueen dress hugged her figure perfectly, her designer heels clicking against the studio floor with unmistakable authority. Each step carried a silent message: I own this stage. This is my battle. She scanned the studio, her lips curling into a slight smirk. To Sunny, this wasn't just another discussion. This was war. The theme music played, the lights flashed on the show began. Joy Behar took the lead. Today we're discussing the Supreme Court's decision to strike down race-based admissions. For some, this is a victory for justice. For others, it's a devastating loss. And I know Sunny has a lot to say on this topic. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her voice dripping with conviction. Joy, this is the greatest setback in decades. I can't believe that in 2024 we're still debating whether we should ensure fairness for people. Color Day isn't just important, it's essential to correcting America's historical wrongs. Sarah Haynes folded her hands, her voice calm, yet piercing. But Sunny, let's look at the reality. When universities ignore merit and prioritize race, they create a system of reverse discrimination. Why should an Asian student with far higher SAT scores be rejected while someone else is admitted solely because they're a minority? Sunny's jaw tightened. She interrupted immediately. Sarah, you're repeating right-wing rhetoric. Those students aren't being rejected because they're Asian. The system is just trying to correct past injustices. Alyssa Farah Griffin chuckled slightly, then delivered her rebuttal. Really, Sunny? Then why did Harvard itself admit that it lowered admission standards for black students while raising the bar for Asians? Sunny froze. Murmurs rippled through the studio. Sarah pressed forward. Day is creating a generation that no longer believes in real fairness. If we keep pretending this system is flawless, we'll push America into a dangerous cycle. Sunny slammed her hand on the table. You don't understand, Day. Isn't just policy, it's justice. Silence fell. Joy Behar glanced around, sensing the weight of the moment. Sarah tilted her head, a slight smirk forming. Alyssa leaned in, her voice steady yet sharp. Justice that dismisses talent based on skin color. Sunny's face turned red. She knew she had lost control. What she didn't know was that within hours this explosive moment would be spreading across America like wildfire. Night had fallen over the city, but the debate over days showed no signs of fading. From the polished offices of Wall Street to the closed-door meetings of America's largest corporations, a wave of concern was spreading. Those who once championed diversity and inclusion were now facing the real consequences of Day on the news. Anchors engaged in heated debates. Fox News openly questioned whether Day was truly benefiting society or if it had become a disguised form of discrimination. Meanwhile, CNN stood firm in its defense of the policy, even as mounting evidence of its failures became harder to ignore. Then the stories began to surface, stories that Day supporters would rather keep buried. In 2022, Boeing, one of the world's leading Aerospace-based companies launched an ambitious initiative, a complete overhaul of its hiring process to align with DEI's standards. A goal was to diversify its workforce and ensure greater representation of minority groups in doing so. However, Boeing removed numerous seasoned engineers, professionals who had spent decades designing, refining, and ensuring the safety of aircraft. Their replacements were chosen not based on merit, but on race and gender. At first, no one suspected anything. Boeing was a global giant, and surely it wouldn't risk compromising safety for the sake of diversity quotas. But then disaster struck. A Boeing flight departing from Denver experienced a catastrophic mechanical failure just minutes after takeoff. An engine panel detached midair, causing violent turbulence and sheer panic among passengers. A pilot managed to execute an emergency landing, preventing fatalities. But the ensuing investigation was damning. The report revealed that the failure was due to a critical design flaw, one that would have been caught if Boeing had retained its most experienced engineers months later. An independent audit further confirmed that Boeing had prioritized DEI policies over technical expertise, leading to preventable engineering failure. When this revelation became public, Americans were outraged. They began to ask hard questions. Was DEI more important than public safety? Did Boeing sacrifice lives for diversity quotas? How many other corporations were making the same mistake? Panic spread to the corporate world. Rival airlines began quietly distancing themselves from DEI commitments, while Boeing found itself at the center of unprecedented scrutiny. But this was only the beginning. The Mayo Clinic scandal. 2023. In 2023, Mayo Clinic, one of the most prestigious health care systems in the United States, announced a deep commitment to DEI. They implemented a new policy stating that leadership promotions would prioritize Black and female doctors. White male doctors would have limited advancement opportunities. The consequences were immediate. A white doctor with over 20 years of experience who had saved countless lives was denied a promotion. The reason given is race and gender. The hospital needed to meet diversity quotas. Instead, a younger, less experienced doctor from a minority group was promoted. No one questioned it until medical errors began piling up. A patient in critical condition required immediate heart surgery. The procedure was performed by one of the newly promoted doctors under the DEI policy, but a small yet fatal mistake in the operating room led to the patient's death. An internal review followed. The findings were alarming. The surgeon, though skilled, had not yet reached the experience level required for such a high-risk procedure, but he had been promoted because of DEI mandates, not expertise. The scandal shook the nation. The victims' families sued the hospital. Patients across the country began questioning whether DEI was undermining medical standards. Within months, Mayo Clinic quietly reversed its policy, but the damage was done. Once again, Americans were left wondering, did DEI just cost a life? How many more lives were at risk due to the system? How many other hospitals were secretly implementing similar policies? News of Boeing and Mayo Clinic dominated national headlines. Millions of Americans share reports detailing the dangerous consequences of DEI. Conservative media outlets called it the ultimate proof of DEI's failure, while DEI supporters struggled to contain the backlash. But this time they could not control the narrative because the public had seen the real-world consequences on political talk shows. Conservative commentators grew bolder in their attacks on the progressive politicians. Once vocal supporters of the policy suddenly went silent or dodged questions. Social media erupted with hard questions. Can we trust a system that values identity over competence? Is DEI destroying the very industries that uphold American society? When will people finally admit that DEI is a failure? Meanwhile, at ABC News headquarters, Sunny Hostin was watching all of it unfold. She knew that a wave of opposition was rising, ING stronger than ever, and she knew that soon she would have to defend DEI on live television. What she did not realize was that this storm was about to consume her too. America has never lacked hypocritical figures, but few have been exposed as brutally as Sunny Hostin. Just weeks ago, she was one of the most powerful voices defending DEI from her seat at The View. She relentlessly criticized America for not doing enough to promote racial diversity. She demanded that companies hire based on racial quotas and that universities lower admission standards to ensure equal opportunities for all. But now she was no longer the one standing at the podium. She was the one being judged. What started as a whisper soon became a storm. A conservative journalist known for sharp investigative reports published an article that sent shock waves through the media. The article opened with a question: does Sunny Hostin truly believe in DEI? Or is it merely a tool she uses to maintain power? It wasn't just an argument. It was backed by evidence. First revelation: Sunny Host sends her children to an elite private school that does not follow DEI policies. Records from one of New York's most prestigious schools revealed that Sunny Host's children attended an institution among the most elite in America. This was a merit-based school, no racial quotas, no special preferences for minorities. Every student had to compete purely on academic excellence. Tuition at this school exceeded $60,000 per year, a price far out of reach for the very minority families Sunny claimed to be fighting for. Why would a woman who declared that DEI is justice not want her own children subjected to it? This revelation sparked a wave of outrage. The public began calling her a fraud, someone who enforced rules on others, but refused to follow them herself. Within hours, major news outlets jumped on the story. Fox News, The Daily Wire, and other conservative platforms seized the opportunity to dismantle one of the left's most vocal figures. But the bigger shock was that even mainstream and left-leaning outlets began reporting on it. At first, CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times attempted to ignore the scandal, but as it spread uncontrollably, they could no longer remain silent. Even Sunny's allies started distancing themselves. On a View, no one mentioned the article on the first day, but behind the scenes.